Hello, inspiring professionals. Welcome back to WealthQuest. Today, we're going to discuss a topic of leadership in these very uncertain times and how can you manage your mindset and manage um, people around you while we're going through this very stressful, very difficult times. And today, I invited a special guest to my channel. His name is Vlad Ivanov. Vlad is a managing director and head of an infrastructure investment banking team at one of the world's largest investment banks. Um, what's interesting about Vlad is he is also a certified yoga teacher and a meditation teacher in training. And we've had many interesting conversations in terms of how people can use the power of mindfulness, the power of meditation, while working for a very demanding corporate environment. So I'm sure he'll have a lot of great things for us to share on this topic. So welcome, Vlad.
Thanks, Catherine. Thanks for having me. Nice to
Yeah.
be here.
So Vlad, tell me, so from your perspective, what are you noticing are the main challenges for someone in a leadership position right now, like yourself?
Look, I think the challenge for us these days, I mean, first of all, is just to say that we're all facing very unprecedented things. I don't think not only in our lifetimes, but generally sort of in the lifetime of the history that we study, we're not really prepared for such a thing. So this is all a bit of a new territory. But where I find myself thinking about how do I solve this is right. It's three things. It's and how do you manage all the internal stakeholders around you in this world where there's like a fog of war. You don't have the perfect information. How do you disseminate information and keep everybody aware of what you're doing and being on the same page? How do you connect with your team without being there with them in person and knowing that they're going through a lot of stress and a lot of sort of their own issues? Um, and then third, last but not least, how do you stay sane and positive yourself?
Exactly. And also, one thing I'm noticing is that this time is kind of really quiet for a lot of people and they're getting time to connect. But what I'm noticing is that for people who are running teams, who are running their own businesses, this is actually quite the opposite. They are not having any free minute in a day. They have to work much harder. They have to worry about way more things than on a usual week. So maybe if we can start there, how do you keep sane?
It's a challenge, right? It's a challenge, and we were
Mm,
just chatting before we started this recording that I confess to you, I freak out on average once a day. It's just what it is, and the things come to you, and you start imagining things what's going to happen with this situation, with this person, and it's a lot to take, right? Because the nature of my job is to be with clients, to talk to them about what's happening out there and how we can be helpful. And obviously, in these times of uncertainty and crisis, there's a lot that going on, and maybe not in a very stable way.
mm,
So you sort of end up spending 12 hours a day on the phone talking to your clients in sort of crisis management type mode, and then you get away from that, and you've got all the pandemic news on social media. You talk to your friends about this. You check in with your relatives, your family about this,
mm,
and there's just no break from that, right? So
yeah,
what I find really important is just to try and have that space, whatever it is. And I never try and impose any sort of teachings, if you will, or practices on anyone. And everybody has his or her own way. But
mhm,
for me, just making that space and just trying to disconnect from that information overload that is all filled with this crisis, red alert type of thing,
yeah. So you're talking about the
has been
mental
favorite.
space.
Yeah, it can be
Or,
many things,
mhm,
right? It's all the practices that we find for ourselves that are soothing or nurturing. It's For me, it's obviously it's yoga and it's meditation, which I genuinely believe are the two pieces of the toolkit that are pretty essential in modern world. And I think the world will come to an understanding of that gradually, very very soon. Um, but again, it's not just that; it's also sitting down and just doing a piece of household or a walk in the park whilst it's still allowed,
yeah.
without without reading a tweet about how this mask works and this doesn't, right? Or what happens in this country and not in that country, and where are we on the curve, and all of those things,
Mm.
because it just becomes too much. I believe
Mm.
that this sort of builds up internally in us, and up to a point we all feel we're kind of fine and we can cope, but we
Mhm.
actually have to be really careful, and I think proactively managing our mental and spiritual well-being, because
Mm.
this builds up, right? And this is a big toll.
Absolutely. You want to catch it early. I think one of the most important things in mental health is to realize early when you need to have an outside help, or where you need just to work with the tools that help your mind to settle and be able to see more clearly, more strategically, or just focus on what is the next important step to do. Yoga and meditation is something that I've been exploring for many years as well. So I'm super biased that this is something very effective. Um, you were also mentioning, doing things around the house, going for a walk. And for me, all these things are, including meditation, is just a tool to come out of thinking too much. There's layers of thinking that includes anxiety, anxious thinking, and coming into the present moment, as in being in your body, connecting with your environment, instead of being in your mind, where we can go down a lot of different rabbit holes, especially when we have high levels of stress and uncertainty in our lives. Um, so obviously, people can pick and choose which tools like really kind of snap them out of this incessant thinking and into the present moment. And for some people, it's simply exercise, right? Something
Yeah.
like, I don't know, if I'm planking for trying to plank for 2 minutes, I'm definitely not in my head. I'm like, I'm definitely very strongly in my body.
Oh, wow, I should try that.
Yeah. But what I'm interested in hearing from you, because we had a really fascinating discussion about meditation, about one of those tools that helps you to come out of thinking and being more present with yourself. I know you worked for a variety of investment banks for many years, and this is just not something that I often hear people use or think about using for recreation, for sort of clearing the mind. Can you maybe tell me a little bit of your story and why you found it so helpful?
Yeah, yeah, happy to. And I think, look, I think one of the challenges is actually a little bit of a shift in perspective and shift in approach. I love this story when there was an ex-banker who sort of converted to being a meditation teacher, and he was he was talking about his experience, and he was saying, when I was a banker, I made the most money. Now that I'm spiritual, I'll be the most spiritual. So it's that. It's
Mhm.
we are wired in our culture, in our upbringing, in our education, in our careers to be most efficient, try and be successful by using the least resource, trying to prioritize, trying to action to get to the end point faster. So it's a very action bounded mentality, and mindfulness is the opposite of that in a way.
Mhm.
Mindfulness does not say be passive and do nothing, but mindfulness does say observe rather than instinctively jump at it.
Mhm.
See what's going on, and see if you can hold it for a period of time before you respond to it in a conscious way. And this is ultimately, to me, what I find so fascinating about this, because I do find that this actually over time helps me across the piece. It helps me in my personal relationship, it helps me in my professional relationship with my clients, with my colleagues, superiors, subordinates,
Mm.
anybody, because we're all people, right? And we all sort of we have this emotional connection, which if we pause and we have the time to establish, um, we can connect on a much deeper level.
Mm. And what I'm noticing as well, as a result of that, you can be also more successful in whatever it is you do, especially, if you're working with people, if you're working with a lot of clients, if you're managing a team, if you have the opportunity or ability to be more present and more kind of attentive to what's in front of you, like for example, this human being, then you're more able to perceive what's really going on for them, pick up on some subconscious clues on the body language, and to really kind of respond effectively.
Yeah.
Versus, if you're too much in your mind worrying about what you're going to say next, or how is this going to work out for you if you really need to close this deal right now.
It's very much that, and there's also, for all of us sort of modern age information junkies, there's actually quite a lot of research that has been done in the last probably 20-25 years that actually supports and validates that.
Mm.
So you can sit down and explore things that you could argue are very ancient traditions, but actually only very recently there's been some tangible scientific evidence from neuroscience, from business science as well, that these tools and techniques are actually
This is
um,
actually the book that you
promoting.
you recommended to me last time we met.
That is my favorite one. Oh, well done, well done. I
it's called
absolutely love that book. I recommend it to everybody.
it's called The Science of Meditation by Daniel Goleman and Richard Davidson. To be honest, I found it quite difficult to read, because it's actually is very scientific. But if you are with a lot of like case studies and research, and like just neuroscience, but if you're someone who is, say, like Vlad, you used to be a non-believer in the benefits of meditation. I think this book is probably quite effective at converting people. What do you say?
Yeah, that's one of the ways.
Yeah.
But really, I mean, the other way to think about it is,
Mm.
again, bringing it back to our realities of our age, we try and work on ourselves so that our lives are better, right? We work on our bodies. I think it's commonplace to say exercise is a good thing. We exercise more or exercise less depending how diligent we are, but generally we all accept that exercise is a good thing for our bodies. Uh, but by the same token, our mind and our brain, our mentality is probably actually our most productive tool. But if you
Mm.
really think about it, you don't consciously work on exercising that muscle. And here's a set of tools and techniques that allow you to do that.
Mhm.
And it's not just an abstract set, it's a very concrete set. You don't have to believe in any religion or philosophy to start exploring these practices. And there's
Mm.
tangible scientific evidence that they work.
And could you maybe share with me like what exactly you do in your day to make space for this type of practices?
Yeah, so it's a conscious choice, right? Because the way the schedule works for, I think, for many of us is, unless you make something a priority, just never happens, right? So you just have to sit down and say, I have to allocate a space in my day for some of those practices that ultimately are good for me in the long term. And once you've made that choice, you can sit down and allocate. And for me, it was a journey. You asked me what my path was. I've always been in finance and in investment banking for many years. I started in 2003, and I started exploring yoga. Maybe it was about 7 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago,
Mhm.
and it sort of gradually grew on me. I found that type of exercise that includes stretching, strength, and breathing techniques all in one, plus concentration,
Yeah.
a very conducive form of exercise. So that became easy to adhere to because it kind of becomes a little bit addictive and you kind of try and explore more of it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there is a slot, there are slots in my calendar where I sort of just say, look, unless there's an emergency going on, I'm going to allocate some time to that. And I think it's the same with meditation. It's the good thing about this is cumulative, right? So
Mhm.
they say every little counts, but also like doesn't have to be a certain amount you want to go. You can add it up. Everything you do adds up. So you can do it whenever you want. Now we're on this lockdown, so I tend to sit in my living room on a cushion, which I brought from Ling, the Tibetan Buddhist monastery in Scotland.
Wow.
But it doesn't
Mm.
have to be right. When we're in normal life, I would sit down and try and do it on a tube journey. and the
Yeah.
person next to me will probably think I'm napping or
Mhm.
something, or just looking weird if my eyes are half open.
Mhm.
And sometimes people on an airplane think I'm weird because I would put out a phone and I would start the timer and I put sort of the
Uh-huh.
phone down with the
And
timer
just
ticking and
sit.
to sit, and people will get worried like, what is this guy doing looking strange, and there's
What
a
is he
timer coming
waiting
through.
for?
So so there are sort of awkward situations with this, but
Uh,
the I think the takeaway is that you can just explore it, and there's many ways. You don't have to be in a zen state. You don't have to be necessarily in a quiet place. You don't have to be sitting. You don't have to do a certain thing. There's many ways you can explore it if you just consciously say this is something you want to work on.
mm, great piece of advice. The fact that you don't have to do it, like an hour a day, every day to get benefits of it, especially in the beginning. It's better to start gradually, literally. Can you meditate for 2 minutes in a day? For 3 minutes, for 5 minutes, for 10, and so on. I do find it's useful though to create some sort of a structure around it. So, for example, to decide, okay, now it's during this lockdown, I'm spending 2 less hours on travel or an hour less on travel. So I'm going to allow myself for the first, I don't know, 10 minutes of my working day to sit and try and practice meditation, even though it might be really hard, especially now, calming down your mind. So some of the ways that I actually found it helpful at the beginning, so people may have heard of tools like Calm or Headspace. These are the type of meditations where you can really gauge it to, it's really gauged to people who are starting out in this, or people who are finding it hard to practice by themselves. So it's much easier when you have a voice that's guiding you. I actually have a couple of meditations recorded on my channel as well, if people are curious to explore. And also it's sort of easy to, just go on YouTube and find a specific meditation that just really suits your needs and you really vibe with. That's also a good place to start.
One more thing I wanted to touch upon is I
Mhm.
think when we talk about, because we started talking about what does this mean for leadership, and obviously leadership is not just one person. Leadership is all about how you interact with others. I
Absolutely.
think one
Hmm.
thing we were talking about just before we started this conversation is, again, in this environment of uncertainty and unprecedented challenge, I would say we're all making an effort in our respective organizations to reach out, to be there for our colleagues, particularly for our junior colleagues, and kind of be all together and show them that we care for them and we support each other. But the backdrop of that interaction is always from the basis of we're okay. We're okay. You're always portraying yourself as being fine. You're always saying you're fine. We're going to come out on top, and this is why you try and bring a sort of positive spin to it.
Mm.
And it's good because it gives a certain optimistic basis. But we shouldn't forget that obviously reality is very challenging for each and every one of us.
Hmm.
And that is this polarity concept where you have the hope of a better outcome and the challenge of reality. And I think acknowledging that, and this is what I've been sort of thinking about quite a lot, is just acknowledging that challenge, acknowledging people's thoughts, fears, concerns, uh, without sort of creating a culture that just, hey, everything's okay, is actually, I think, very important. We had a
Mm.
we had a catch up with some of my colleagues the other day. It was four of us on the phone, and three of them work with me in a sort of in a team environment. And I started by saying, "Hey, how you guys doing?" And they all said, "We're fine." And then I thought I'd break the ice a bit, and I said, "Well, I'm actually not that fine. I kind of, feel like I'm a bit overwhelmed because I'm on the phone to clients 12 hours a day, and it's all about the virus, and then it's all the media and everything. And sometimes I
Mm.
just feel like I need a break." And and then and then one of the guys said to me, "Hey, that's actually exactly how I feel." And then another person shared something else, and then another person shared something else. So all of a sudden, reframing that discussion opened up, I think, something that people are longing for in terms of just accepting where they are rather than saying it's all fine, it's all fine.
I really love what you're saying, and the fact that you are uh, finding the courage to bring this up at work, because I'm sure it's an issue for many people because we kind of supposed to wear this masks, like, we're this tough guys, we can handle anything. And yet, people talk more and more about the importance of vulnerability in the workspace in order to be able to be an effective leader. So, say, I don't know if people have seen the talks of Brené Brown. She talks about it at length. And yeah, it's great to hear how you're finding ways to implement it right now and really showing this kind of example to other upcoming leaders. There's a lot of courage in that. What do you think? What kind of opportunities that this really difficult times are offering to leaders in terms of how they can grow and evolve?
Well, when I think about what attracts me in great leaders, a lot of that is around authenticity, and I think particularly in this time, I think being authentic, on the one hand, it's possibly easier because you're sort of sitting down and talking to people on Zoom from your room in your house, wearing casual clothes and things like this. And I
Mhm.
see a lot of sort of my seniors doing the same thing. But on the other hand, it's actually not that easy because you kind of have to open up a little bit and kind of preach what you pray, if you will, or generally speaking, be um, just be true to yourself, right? And when you are, I think that authenticity actually carries a lot of emotional bondage that creates that connection with people, and people will build a lot more trust and a lot more um, spirit to follow you wherever you need to take them. Um, and the other thing is, obviously, this is also something that again we keep talking about it as something we haven't faced before. So there are new challenges, but one of the challenges is how do you actually make space to think about what's going to happen 5 steps ahead. I think a lot of us are looking at each other saying, look, this world is not going to be the same. A lot of things are going
Yeah.
to change. We're going to change things, how we think about our ways, how we think about each other, how we think about certain habits, certain behaviors, and actually making space to think about that versus um, the attraction, if you will, or the habitual inclination to put out the fires that are burning fast and hard right now
Mhm.
is something that could also be a big strategic win because because again there is a fundamental shift going on and kind of thinking about that and thinking what could that mean um, for us is something that could create possibilities, create opportunities.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And besides this situation being a true tragedy for many people, what are you finding in terms of if there were some, opportunities that were coming out of this situation in the future, and how this is changing the world um, for the future generations, perhaps? What kind of do you see any silver lining in what's happening right now?
um, I try to find it every
Mhm.
day. I don't think it needs to be that sort of high level or sophisticated. It can be very simple things. I got a message the other day from my first yoga teacher, who I haven't been in touch for a couple of years because he moved out of town, not offering classes in London anymore. And all of a sudden, because we're all locked down, he's on Zoom and he's offering some sessions on Zoom. And that was an opportunity for me to reconnect with him, and I absolutely enjoyed that. We had a great sort of reunification, if you will. So on a small scale, there's certainly things you can find every day that create positive emotions and positive feelings, regardless of what's happening out there.
Mhm.
I think on the longer term basis, um, I actually think this is certainly a wake up call for us as a sort of human species, if you will, or humanity.
Mm.
But I think actually, however tragic the situation is today, we are maybe in a way lucky, and it may be a strange thing to say, but from the data we have, the mortality of this thing is obviously very sad. All these people who are losing their lives, it's a terrible tragedy. But if you listen to somebody like a Bill Gates who researched these things and thought about potential options, it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a bug that is dramatically worse. So this thing's not going to eradicate humanity, and we're actually going to come out of it stronger because we're going to come out of it with lessons learned. We're going to come out of it more prepared, and not just from an epidemiology point of view, but also from an economy point of view, because I don't think our economy was built to withstand a shutdown. So at the moment, everyone's kind of looking around and saying, how is it going to work? But for example, the banking system today is a lot more resilient than it was 15 or 20 years ago, because we went through a financial crisis and we went through a stabilization approach that
Mm.
allowed the banking system to have a lot of resource and resiliency. So today, actually, the banks are facilitating a lot of the important things for the economy, and they're able to do it because that system is a lot more stable. So, long story short, I think we'll get some positives out of this long term, but it's going to be a tough journey. So, yeah, we'll just have to go through it.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for taking time. I know your schedule is completely insane right now. So thank you for taking time to share with people some of your experiences, which I think are very valuable um, to people who are finding it extremely stressful going through their day to days right now. And so, if we were to summarize what we just discussed, and please add if I just missed anything. So, in terms of what can help you to become a more effective leader while going through this very difficult situation right now, is one, having some sort of practice that brings you into your body, brings you into the present moment, into, out of the incessant thinking, out of the anxiety and stress. And by the way, something I wanted to mention before, it doesn't mean you will stop thinking. It just means you'll be connected to more strategic, more sort of deeper, intuitive level of thinking where more creative solutions come from. That was number one. So, practices that help you to be more present in the moment, introducing them into your life. We talked about mindfulness practices like yoga, breath work, and meditation. But you can go and look for something that works for you. We talked about vulnerability, about kind of showing up and naming what emotions are present so that others can also have them expressed, and we can kind of connect on that level as well. Being more authentic leader, showing up how you're showing up and just letting others to be themselves. I think that's a pretty poignant moment for people to have ability to do that. Looking, taking time to think strategically, to running these different potential scenarios of what may happen going forward in order to know how to manage your team, to take the direction in your business, to potentially find opportunities in what's happening. And so lastly, looking for, even though this is going to be distraction for some companies, businesses, there are companies and sectors that are actually becoming more profitable, that are thriving during this time, partly because they're providing a service that people really need at the moment. And so looking for how to direct your business, your life, to steer it in the direction where you're finding and covering those opportunities and aligning your life and career with those. Anything you'd like to add?
I think it's a great summary. And I think the one thing I would add to that is, as we all go through it, we at least I find myself being still very hard on myself, and kind of saying in a way to myself, okay, well, this is all happening now. This is like the test. This is the test. How successful can you be professionally in a crisis term? This is the test of how good you are a leader for a team. This is a test how caring you are a family member to your parents, or this, that, and the other. And that just escalates it. And that's another level of pressure that we create for ourselves. So just holding everything that happens with just a little bit of kindness to yourself, first of all, to ourselves, and just kind of sometimes maybe taking the time just to say to yourself, it's okay, it's okay. This is a way to get through another day, and that's that's what we're trying to do here at the end of the day.
That's a beautiful point. I love that. Bring in more kindness. Learn to be more kinder to ourselves and others. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Vlad. Thank you again for taking time on a Saturday evening. It's just past 7 o'clock, so it's my meditation on red wine o'clock. So I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you, and
Exactly.
I'm sure we'll chat more, and hopefully we'll record more interesting videos together, interviews.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hopefully
Stay
next time
well.
in person, huh?
Yeah.